He's alive! Alive! What do you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Let me know in the comment section down below, and you will be read out in next week's show. Whilst you're there, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today, it will do them a power of good. Now, on to the review. You can tell we're getting close to Halloween, given just how horrific some of the events in this week's episode were. Now, for the record, I never saw the preview to this week's episode, and I am certain that I didn't. I want to go into this week's episode as fresh as I possibly could do, even though, given the way that last week's episode ended, you could kind of guess where this one was going to end up going. But as always, let us start off with the positives. And I have to say here and now that this week's episode was an incredibly well-paced episode. Given that we effectively have two stories going on at once, I feel that a decent balance was found between them, with neither of them feeling as though they were taking oxygen away from the other, and with the pace of the entire episode being maintained more or less all the way throughout it, with there never being any moments where it suddenly got too fast or it started to drag. Everything felt as though it had its time to spread its wings, no pun intended, and feel complete enough within the episode itself to give a compelling overall experience. I feel that the moment in the episode where Midoriya has this connection to the first user of One for All was honestly really fantastic. It was this really powerful moment that sold the oncoming terror in a way which really sold the situation itself. We all knew that this was about to happen pretty much from the moment that last week's episode ended. We knew that Tomura was going to go on this big, crazy murder festival, but we weren't entirely sure when it was going to be. And I think that this stylistic turn that we end up getting where Midoriya's looking over at the hospital, then all of a sudden it goes quiet and we just see carnage starting to break out before the soundtrack ends up coming back into it was really brilliantly done, and again, it really just plays into the terror and the horror of the events starting to unfold there. I have to say that the violence with Tomura wasn't as gratuitous as I worried it was going to be. I had honestly worried that we're just going to have a moment which oversold the darkness of the moment. We're just going to have Tomura just horrifically murdering people left and right, and it would have been one of those moments where effectively the entire extras and extended cast would essentially just being used as some kind of yardstick to show just how much more power Tomura has now, because he has ascended to a level beyond Tomura. He's become the legendary Super Tomura, and just bodies being thrown about left and right to just show, look, he's a super cool, badass bad guy now. Our heroes sure are in for it now. Harumph. And just as I was writing this part in my review, I started to have visions as to how this would have looked if it was like in some kind of Netflix adaptation where you just have a bunch of heroes running towards him and Tomura would just be touching them, they turn into dust or some horrible music would be playing in the background, and thankfully we didn't get that. We got it in a far more horrific way, which made Tomura feel like a force of nature rather than just a superpowered serial killer, which I really didn't want to see, because when we're getting into stuff like this, and this is kind of my worry for My Hero Academia going forward, that there's a fine level that needs to be balanced when you're talking about darker and more mature material without it starting to feel edgelordy and without it feeling adolescent. And so far we're avoiding that. And when I've realised that Tomura was going to go on this big crazy murder festival, that I was worried that we're going to go down into that path. Hopefully we don't get into that, but we'll soon see. As for more positives, I am happy the students actually did something. The stuff with Tokayama saving Hawks was great. It was a lot of fun, or as fun as a dramatic sequence of events as that can possibly be. I respect that the heroes of this world are still expected to do the no-killing stuff, whereas most heroes in other fiction these days are perfectly fine with maiming, killing, murdering, committing war crimes, and that's in the family-friendly movies. Just have a bunch of heroes which are rigidly devoted to the we will not kill the villains, we'll just beat them up and take them in. I can respect. It feels as though it has a little bit more weight to it, and it makes the moment with Hawks killing twice have a lot more weight to it, whereas had this been any other series, it would just be a case of, oh, he's killed him. Oh, well, that's just what they do. When he did that, it felt like a line was being crossed, and it's something that he'll have to deal with later on, particularly when he comes to, and Tokayama no doubt will want to have it out with him as far as that's concerned. And as my final positive, I enjoyed the moments of humour in this week's episode. I don't feel they felt too out of place. They felt very situational. I know that it might not be for everyone's liking, but I liked them. They really found their place within the episode, because given just how dark everything else is, they could have felt a little bit too jarring. Even the bit with Mount Lady, I really enjoyed it, even though it felt like it was just there for the sake of fan service. But when you have Fat Gum going, "Oh no, bottom!" it did make me laugh a lot. It was just so brilliantly silly that it added something to the overall flavour of the episode without taking anything away from it. Now we're getting to the negatives, and I'll be honest, there's not many, because I think this episode itself is just remarkably solid. So forgive me if these feel like nitpicks, because I've tried to be a little bit balanced here. I've tried to find positives and negatives. And my negatives, again, might feel like nitpicking, but they are things that kind of irked me a little bit. I think that the mechanism that brought Tomura to life felt a little bit too coincidental. Like, I know what they were doing there. They're trying to do a Frankenstein's monster thing, with the monster being brought back to life with lightning, and now it's electricity. But it's only brought back to life because X-Pass, or whatever his name is, did a thing. He accidentally exploded something he shouldn't have exploded. Now Tomura's woken up. So what, we're saying that had he not done that, Tomura still would have just been brought in? I mean, it feels a bit too much like a stretch. If he was to be woken up and brought back, I can't help but feel there must have been a better way in doing it, because I really don't like just how coincidental and accidental it feels. I don't know how to best articulate it without it sounding like a rant, but I feel that there needed to be more of a reason for him to be woken up. Maybe had X-Pass, or whatever his name is, made more of an effort to deactivate this machine, and then accidentally woke him up, or something that was in this machine and we knew what it was at the time, and he went, "Oh no, I have to stop this thing," and there was kind of a case of, well, he needs to stay here and make sure Tomura doesn't wake up, but he has to stop this thing. But in the end, it wasn't. It was just a case of him looking over and going, "Huh, what's that? That wasn't blown up. I'm going to make it blow up. Blow up. Oh no, Tomura's awake and I'm turning to dust. Oh dear." Like, it feels like that needed more to it. Rather than it just be a case of, "Oh no, there's a thing. I'm going to blow up the thing. Oh no, now I'm dead." It felt a little bit too tenuous for me. Though, with that said, again, maybe a nitpick. My second nitpick, for all the things as far as negatives are concerned, I feel that the bit with the bullets feels tacked on. I really don't think we needed to get confirmation that the bullets have been destroyed, because they've not been a moment, they have not really been an aspect of the show, really, in a very long time. The only time they've ever been relevant in the past couple of years or so is with the most recent movie, and of course, canonicity as far as these things are concerned is up for debate, even though at this point it does look like even the second movie is being brought into the main canon in some way, shape or form, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I do feel that maybe it was included as a case of, for the writer saying to the audience, look, the quirk-killing bullets aren't an option, they're not going to defeat Tomura, stop writing in and telling us that that's something that could happen. Of course, you could also argue that it was done to just show just how desperate the situation is, that our heroes don't have a thing that can immediately touch to and try to use it, but at the same time, again, it kind of feels more like a case of stop writing into the magazine and telling me that this is an option. And there's a part of me just now thinking that maybe them trying to use the quirk-killing bullets would have been interesting. It would have been an interesting little moment. They try to use it, but it doesn't work, or they try to use it, but he knows about it and deflects it. Just something like that would have made for a neat moment of desperation, rather than the case of he opens a thing, oh, they're broken, oh, well, move on and never raise it again. As a whole, I think this episode was fantastic, and again, it's difficult for me to find tangible things I found wrong with it, because it's an incredibly competent episode. I'm not going to say this is the best episode of the season thus far, because I frankly don't think it is, but it's not the weakest either. And even though there is this recurrent thing of, yeah, we knew that this was going to happen, we knew that Tomura was going to come out of his box and start murdering people, we didn't know the events were going to happen quite like this, and the way that they happened was interesting. For the record, of course, I've not watched the preview to next week's episode, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he goes on a more of a killing spree, and I'm worried that we're going to get the big murder festival moment in some form, this big gratuitous killing scene of the superheroes turning to dust and blood and goo left, right and centre. But anyway, before I start getting too far into a tangent, let us go into a comment corner! Our first comment comes from X1, who says, honestly, I didn't mind the title. This is, of course, referring to last week's episode, which I've kind of had a bit of a problem with. Sure, it was a little bit on the nose, but I'm more of a journey over destination doofus. And I understand that. Maybe I was a bit too critical of it, and I do apologise if I was a bit too critical of that episode as a whole. And whilst I do agree with your sentiment, I do feel that, like, for programmes like My Hero Academia, there needs to be this greater sense of surprise and will they, won't they about the event. Sure, with certain things you can kind of guess that they're going to happen and certain fights are going to end the way that they are, but I feel that there needs to be that sense of, well, maybe it could go another way. And when you have an episode that almost literally says the villain wins in its title, it kind of leaves me thinking, okay, so when we're going to get to the fireworks factory, when we're going to see it. I suppose I should be grateful that they're not like the titles from the Dragon Ball Super dub, where it just feels like a word salad, but again, it felt a little bit too on the nose for my liking, but hey, I mean, different strokes for different folks. Our second comment comes from Timeless, who says, first off, to other commentators, please don't spoil him. That's a really dick move. And for second, about Tomura's coma destruction thing. It isn't mentioned in the show or manga, but it's actually Tomura's visage world, similar to Deku's one. It's been confirmed in the behind-the-scenes end of manga chapter page. And thank you for your support in the spoiler matter. There's a part of me that is tempted to do a video on it towards the end of this season, but we'll see how that goes. It's work starting to get really busy for me, and by the looks of things, this season's going to go on for another 4-5 months, so we'll see how I'm feeling by then. By that point, I think probably even the ending of My Hero Academia has been spoiled for me, but we'll see. On the matter of the Visage World stuff, I think it is a fascinating idea. It's an idea which, for want of a better term, the idea that it's a thing between the pair of them is an interesting one, and it shows this link between the two of them and continues this idea of mirroring and opposites between our heroes and villains, and it further creates that link in a thematic way between Deku and Tomura, and it's something that we touched upon way back when we were getting the origin story and stuff for I hope I said Tomura, when we had the My Villain Academia stuff last season. Knowing that it was supposed to be more of a thing and it wasn't just creative flair, I'll be honest, it doesn't diminish my enjoyment of it. It still works as a moment without you knowing that it's supposed to be a bigger thing, and upon reflection it does kind of feel more like it is setting up this link moment that we get in this week's episode with Midoriya and the first user One For All. Still, it was a great moment, and I'm interested to see what they do with it, if it is a genuine, more tangible thing within the character of Tomura, and he has this mini world thing with him in the same way that Midoriya does, but we'll see about that. What did you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you shortly. Once you're there, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It will do them a power of good. Now, thank you all for watching, and goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!